March 13th, 1964. I. 3:15 in the morning. Queens, New York. Died. A 28-year-old woman named Kitty Genovese is walking home from work. She parks her car. She starts walking toward her apartment building. And then a man named Winston Mosley steps out of the dark and stabs her. She screams. She falls. She screams again. Lights come on the apartment windows above her. People look out. She is lying on the ground, bleeding, calling for help. And nobody comes down. 2 weeks later, the New York Times runs a front-page story. The headline: 37 who saw murder didn't call the police. The story said 38 neighbors watched Kitty Genovese get attacked, watched her die, and not one of them did anything. The story spread everywhere. It became the most famous example of human cruelty and apathy in modern psychology. It launched an entire field of research. It is still in textbooks today. And the part that should actually keep you up at night is not the murder. It's what two psychologists discovered when they tried to understand why people watched and did nothing. Because the answer wasn't apathy. It wasn't cruelty. It wasn't that people didn't care. It was something much worse. Something that is happening inside you right now, whether you know it or not. Before we get to the science, we need to correct something. The 38 witnesses who did nothing story. It wasn't exactly true. In reality, there were far more people who heard the attack than actually saw it. Most were ear witnesses, not eyewitnesses. Very few actually knew what was going on. And some people did act. They called police. And at least one woman came down to hold Kitty as she was dying. The murderer even abandoned his first attack after one witness shouted from a window. The second, fatal attack happened inside a nearby building, where none of the original witnesses could even see. So the 38 silent witnesses, that specific story was exaggerated, possibly invented. But here's the thing. The story being wrong didn't make the science wrong. Because two psychologists, John Darley and Bib Latane, were so disturbed by what they read in that newspaper that they went into a lab and designed an experiment. And what they found was real, and it involves you. Columbia University. Darley and Latane bring participants into a room, one at a time. They give each person a pair of headphones and tell them they'll be talking with other students about the stress of college life. Just a conversation. The catch, and there always is one, is that there are no other students. It's a recording. The whole thing is staged. At some point during the conversation, one of the voices on the recording starts to stutter, then choke, then says clearly that he's having a seizure and needs help. And then silence. What the researchers were measuring was simple. Does the participant leave the room to get help? Now, here is where it gets disturbing. When participants believed they were the only other person within earshot, 85% left the room to report the seizure. And they did it in under a minute. 85%. Why? Almost everyone. Almost immediately. But then Darley and Latane changed one variable. They told participants that 4 other people were also on the line, also listening. Only 31% intervened, and those who did took more than twice as long to respond. Same emergency. Same victim. Same sound of someone choking and asking for help. The only thing that changed was how many people the participant believed were also listening. And just that, just the belief that other people were present, cut the likelihood of helping by more than half. There's a name for what happened in that room. Diffusion of responsibility. It's not complicated. Here's how it works inside your head. Well, you're walking down a street. You see someone collapse. You're the only person around. The entire weight of that emergency lands on you. There's no one else. Either you help or help doesn't come. Your brain understands this immediately. You act. Now put 10 other people on that street. All of them see the same thing. And something shifts. Quietly, without you noticing, your brain makes a calculation. Someone else will probably handle this. Someone more qualified. Someone who is already on their phone. Someone who isn't me. The responsibility doesn't disappear. It spreads across every person watching. And when responsibility is shared by 10 people equally, each person feels 1/10 of it. And 1/10 of responsibility, it turns out, is often not enough to make a person move. This isn't a character flaw. It isn't cowardice. It isn't that people are evil. It is a software bug in how human beings process group situations. It runs in every human brain. It ran in yours the last time you were in a crowd and saw something that made you uncomfortable, and you looked around to see if anyone else was reacting. Here's where the science gets even more uncomfortable. Diffusion of responsibility is only one of the mechanisms. There's a second one, and this one is harder to accept. It's called pluralistic ignorance. Imagine you're in a lecture hall. The professor asks a question. No, you don't understand it. You look around. You will. No one else has their hand up. No one else looks confused. So you conclude, everyone else understood it. It must just be me. Except every single person in that room is doing the same thing. Everyone is confused. No one wants to look confused. So everyone looks calm. And everyone takes everyone else's calmness as proof that there's nothing to be confused about. You were all performing certainty for each other, simultaneously. And it convinced every one of you. Now put this in an emergency. You see something that might be a problem. You're not sure. You look at the people around you. They look calm. They're not running. They're not calling for help. So your brain reads their calmness as information. This isn't actually an emergency. Except they're doing the same thing. They're looking at you. And you look calm to them. A crowd of people, all of them uncertain. All of them watching each other for signals. All of them reading each other's performed calm as evidence that there's nothing wrong. And so no one moves. Not because no one cares, but because everyone is waiting for someone else to confirm that caring is necessary. This isn't theoretical. This is happening in the real world, in real time, in ways you would not expect. In 2019, researchers analyzed CCTV footage from public spaces across 3 countries: the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and South Africa. They watched hundreds of real conflicts unfold on camera. They weren't looking at what people said they would do. They were watching what people actually did. In 9 out of 10 public conflicts, at least one bystander did intervene to try to help, which complicates everything we thought we knew. Because in controlled laboratory conditions, the bystander effect is real and measurable. But in real public emergencies, on streets and in train stations and in shops, People intervened far more often than the theory predicted. So, what's the difference? The difference might be context. In a lab, you sit alone in a room with headphones, uncertain whether what you're hearing is even real. On a street, you are present, you can see the person, you can see them looking at you, and the emergency is unambiguous. In other words, the bystander effect may be most dangerous, not when people are callous, but when people are uncertain, when the situation is ambiguous, when everyone is waiting for someone else to name what is happening. And here is the question that actually matters. How many situations in your life have you walked past, or scrolled past, or looked away from, not because you didn't care, but because you weren't sure if it counted as something to care about, because no one around you was reacting, because you assumed someone else was already handling it? Let's go back to Kitty. The New York Times ran a front-page story 2 weeks after the murder with the headline, "37 Who Saw Murder Didn't Call the Police." That story changed everything. It launched a psychological revolution. It inspired Darley and Latané's research. It directly inspired the creation of 911, the emergency call system that now exists because of Kitty Genovese's death. Millions of people have been helped by 911. Millions of emergencies have been answered. Because of a story that was, in many ways, not entirely true. The real story is more complicated. Some neighbors did act. One woman held Kitty as she died. The murderer ran the first time. Someone shouted. The police were called. And yet, a myth built on an exaggeration created something real and useful that has saved uncountable lives. That is its own strange kind of uncomfortable truth. The bystander effect is real. The research confirms it in laboratories, in field studies, in data. Lol. The more people are present, the more the responsibility dissolves. But the research also shows something else. Something the textbooks don't always include. The effect can be broken instantly by one thing. If someone in a crowd makes a clear, direct, unambiguous request, not someone call 911, but you, in the red jacket, call 911 right now, the diffusion of responsibility collapses. One person becomes responsible, and almost always they act. The bystander effect runs on anonymity. On the assumption that responsibility belongs to everyone, which is another way of saying it belongs to no one. The moment you name someone, the assumption breaks. Which means the question is never really why didn't anyone help? The question is, why didn't anyone name the person who should? There is a woman named Sophia Farrar. She was Kitty Genovese's neighbor and close friend. She is almost never mentioned in the textbooks. On the night of March 13, 1964, Sophia Farrar heard the screams. She ran out of her apartment, down the stairs, and into the hallway where Kitty was lying. She held her. She stayed with her until the ambulance came. She was one person. She saw someone she knew was in danger, and she moved toward it. That's the other thing the research shows. People who know the victim are dramatically more likely to help. The more anonymous the crowd, the more the effect takes hold. The more human and specific and present the situation, the more it breaks. Kitty Genovese was murdered. That part is true. And somewhere in that same night, one woman ran toward her instead of away. History remembered the 38 who didn't come. It nearly forgot the one who did.